Welcome to Biography with Plutarch, where we delve into the lives of remarkable individuals to uncover the intricacies of human character and the timeless lessons that emerge from their experiences. Today, we embark on a fascinating journey through the life of Eric Arthur Blair, better known to us as George Orwell, a man whose profound insights into the human condition continue to resonate deeply with readers around the world. Born on June 25, 1903, in Motihari, Bengal, British India, George Orwell's early life was marked by the complexities of colonialism and the societal hierarchies that came with it. His father, Richard Walmsley Blair, worked in the Indian civil service as a civil servant in the Opium Department, a position that not only reflected the exploitative nature of colonial rule, but also instilled in young Orwell a keen awareness of social injustice. The family's living situation in India was comfortable by the standards of the time, with servants, a large house, and all the trappings of colonial privilege. Yet, it was against this backdrop of privilege and oppression that Orwell's initial perceptions of the world began to take shape. He would often hear the distant sounds of Indian villagers going about their daily lives, a stark contrast to the comfortable yet isolating bubble of colonial life. As we imagine Orwell as a young child, playing in the gardens of his family's home, surrounded by the vibrant colors and sounds of India, it is striking to consider how these early experiences would later influence his writing. The intricate social hierarchies, the contrast between wealth and poverty, and the tensions between colonial rulers and native populations all left an indelible mark on his psyche. His father's role in the Opium Department, in particular, exposed Orwell to the darker aspects of colonialism, where the exploitation of native resources and the suppression of local cultures were justified under the guise of civilization. In 1904, when Orwell was just a year old, his mother, Ida Mabel Blair, moved back to England with him and his older sister Marjorie, settling in Henley-on-Thames. This relocation signified the beginning of a somewhat nomadic childhood for Orwell, punctuated by frequent moves between England and France, where his family had connections. These early experiences of displacement would later influence Orwell's ability to observe societal norms with a critical eye, unencumbered by the blind acceptance that often comes with lifelong residence in one place. As he navigated different cultures and social environments, Orwell developed a keen sense of observation, noting the subtleties of human behavior and the ways in which people interacted with one another. Orwell's educational journey began at a convent school in Henley, where he was taught by nuns who instilled in him a love of learning and a strong foundation in languages. However, it was during his time at St. Cyprian's School in Eastbourne that Orwell's experiences took a more challenging turn. He won a scholarship to attend the school, but his time there was marked by unhappiness and a sense of being an outsider. The harsh realities of boarding school life, coupled with the financial struggles of his family, which made them reliant on scholarships for Orwell's education, contributed to his developing worldview, a mix of empathy for the underdog and disdain for the class divisions that pervaded English society. One particular anecdote from Orwell's time at St. Cyprian's stands out. He was often bullied by his peers, who saw him as a scholarship boy and therefore inferior. These experiences would later find their way into his writing, particularly in his essay, Such Were the Joys, where he reflects on the cruelties of the English boarding school system. The sense of isolation and loneliness that Orwell felt during this period would also shape his future relationships and inform his writings on the human condition. The summer of 1907 marked a significant turning point in Orwell's young life. He began attending Wellington College, but due to his poor health and what was likely a bout of tuberculosis, he spent several months recuperating. It was during this period of recovery that Orwell started to develop a passion for writing, an outlet that would become not only his profession, but also the vehicle through which he would express his deepest concerns about humanity, politics, and morality. As he lay in bed, surrounded by books and papers, Orwell began to explore the world of literature, devouring the works of authors like Dickens, Tolstoy, and Shakespeare. Orwell's decision to join the Imperial Police in Burma, now Myanmar, in 1922, at the age of 19, was a pivotal moment in his early adult life. This choice, motivated by a desire for adventure and possibly an attempt to follow in the colonial footsteps of his family, would expose him to the raw realities of imperialism firsthand. The experiences he had in Burma witnessing the brutal suppression of native populations and grappling with the moral implications of being part of the ruling class, would profoundly shape his political consciousness and inform much of his later writing. The intersections of colonialism, social inequality, and personal struggle that defined his youth would eventually give rise to a body of work that challenges readers to confront the most fundamental questions about freedom, truth, and the human condition. And it is here, at the threshold of Orwell's journey into adulthood and the world beyond his early influences, that we find ourselves poised on the cusp of exploring how these foundational elements would shape one of the 20th century's most compelling voices. As George Orwell navigated the complexities of his role in the imperial police in Burma, he found himself increasingly disillusioned with the brutal realities of colonial rule. The experiences he had during this period, from 1922 to 1927, would later serve as the backdrop for his novel Burmese Days, a scathing critique of British imperialism that exposed the dark underbelly of colonialism. It was during this time that Orwell began to develop a deep empathy for the native populations, who were subjected to arbitrary rule and brutal suppression by the colonial elite. He saw firsthand how the Burmese people were treated as inferior beings, forced to live in poverty and squalor, while the British colonizers enjoyed lavish lifestyles and wielded absolute power. As Orwell delved deeper into the lives of the Burmese people, he began to understand the intricacies of their culture and the ways in which colonialism had disrupted their traditional way of life. He witnessed the destruction of ancient temples, the suppression of native customs, and the exploitation of Burma's natural resources for the benefit of British interests. This dichotomy between the ruling class and the native populations would become a hallmark of his writing, as he sought to expose the injustices of colonialism while also exploring the complexities of human nature. In 1927, Orwell returned to England, where he began to focus more intently on his writing. He moved to Paris, a city that had long been a haven for artists and intellectuals, and it was there that he started to develop his unique voice as a writer. The City of Light was alive with creative energy, and Orwell found himself drawn to the likes of James Joyce, Ernest Hemingway, and other literary giants who were pushing the boundaries of modern literature. His time in Paris was marked by poverty and struggle, but also by a deepening commitment to his craft. He spent long hours writing in dingy cafes, fueled by coffee and cigarettes, as he honed his skills and developed his distinctive style. It was during this period that Orwell began to write seriously, producing essays, reviews, and short stories that would eventually find their way into publications such as the Adelphi and the New Statesman. His writing was marked by a fierce independence of thought and a willingness to challenge conventional wisdom. He wrote about politics, literature, and culture, always seeking to peel back the layers of hypocrisy and reveal the truth beneath. One of the most significant events of Orwell's early writing career occurred in 1928, when he moved to London's East End to immerse himself in the lives of the poor and the downtrodden. He saw firsthand the devastating effects of poverty, the erosion of dignity, and the destruction of hope that occurred when people were forced to live on the margins of society. As Orwell navigated the streets of the East End, he encountered a cast of characters that would become familiar figures in his writing. There was the old man who had lost his family and his livelihood, the young woman who was forced into prostitution to survive, and the disabled veteran who was struggling to make ends meet. These individuals were not just statistics or stereotypes. They were human beings with stories, struggles, and dreams. Orwell's experiences in the East End deepened his empathy for the poor and the vulnerable, and it informed his writing with a sense of urgency and moral purpose. As the 1930s dawned, Orwell's writing began to gain traction. His first book, Down and Out in Paris and London, was published in 1933 to critical acclaim, and it established him as a major voice in British literature. The book's vivid portrayal of poverty and its effects on individuals and society resonated deeply with readers, and it marked the beginning of Orwell's lifelong exploration of the intersection of politics and humanity. The book was not just a work of journalism, but also a powerful indictment of the social and economic systems that perpetuated poverty and inequality. The mid-1930s saw Orwell becoming increasingly involved in the Spanish Civil War, which would become a defining event of his life. In 1936, he traveled to Spain to fight on behalf of the Republican government, which was battling against the fascist forces of General Francisco Franco. Orwell's experiences during this period, including his time as a member of the POUM militia, would later be chronicled in his classic work, Homage to Catalonia. The Spanish Civil War marked a pivotal moment in Orwell's development as a writer and thinker, as he grappled with the complexities of ideology, power, and morality. As Orwell fought alongside the Republicans, he witnessed firsthand the brutal suppression of dissent and the erosion of civil liberties. He saw how the fascist forces used propaganda and violence to control the population, and he began to understand the dangers of totalitarianism. Orwell's experiences in Spain deepened his commitment to democratic values and his opposition to fascism, and it informed his writing with a sense of urgency and moral purpose. He wrote about the war in vivid detail, capturing the sounds, smells, and sensations of battle, as well as the ideological debates and personal struggles that define the conflict. In Homage to Catalonia, Orwell explored the complexities of the Spanish Civil War, examining the role of ideology, power, and morality in shaping the conflict. He wrote about the anarchist and socialist movements, the role of the Soviet Union, and the impact of fascism on Spanish society. The book was not just a work of history, but also a powerful exploration of the human condition, capturing the hopes, fears, and struggles of those who fought in the war. As Orwell reflected on his experiences in Spain, he began to develop a more nuanced understanding of politics and ideology. He saw how ideologies could be used to manipulate and control people, and he began to question the notion of objective truth. Orwell's writing became more sophisticated as he explored the complexities of human nature and the ways in which power and ideology shape our perceptions of reality. In the years that followed, Orwell continued to write about politics, literature, and culture, always seeking to challenge conventional wisdom and expose the truth beneath. He wrote about the rise of fascism in Europe, the dangers of totalitarianism, and the importance of democratic values. As the world teetered on the brink of war, Orwell's writing took on a new sense of urgency and moral purpose. He wrote about the importance of individual freedom, the dangers of government control, and the need for people to think critically and challenge authority. Orwell's writing was not just a reflection of his own values, but also a call to action, urging readers to engage with the world around them and to fight for justice, equality, and human dignity. As the world teetered on the brink of chaos with the onset of World War II, George Orwell's writing continued to serve as a beacon of hope and warning, a clarion call to awaken the masses from their slumber. The air was thick with tension. The smell of smoke and ash hung heavy over the streets of London, and the sounds of air raid sirens pierced the night sky. It was amidst this backdrop of uncertainty that Orwell's classic dystopian novel, 1984, published in 1949, depicted a chilling vision of totalitarianism, where independent thought was suppressed and language was manipulated to control people's perceptions. The novel was born out of his experiences during the Spanish Civil War, where he had witnessed firsthand the brutal suppression of dissent and the manipulation of truth. The memories of the war still lingered in his mind, the images of bombed-out buildings, the sounds of gunfire, and the smell of death lingering in the air. These experiences had a profound impact on Orwell's writing as he poured his heart and soul into crafting a masterpiece that would become one of the most iconic and influential works of the 20th century. As the war raged on, Orwell's health began to decline in the late 1940s, and he suffered from tuberculosis, a disease that had plagued him for years. The illness had taken its toll on his body, leaving him weak and frail, but his mind remained sharp and active. Despite his poor health, he continued to write, producing some of his most insightful and powerful essays, including Politics and the English Language and Why I Write. In these works, he reflected on the importance of language, truth, and intellectual honesty, themes that would become central to his legacy. In Politics and the English Language, Orwell lamented the decline of language, arguing that it had become a tool for manipulation rather than a means of expressing truth. He wrote, "If you want to keep a secret, you must also hide it from yourself," highlighting the ways in which language can be used to conceal reality rather than reveal it. This essay, with its searing critique of propaganda and doublespeak, would become a seminal work in the field of linguistics and a powerful warning about the dangers of manipulative language. In Why I Write, Orwell offered a deeply personal reflection on his own motivations for writing, revealing a complex web of emotions, experiences, and convictions that drove him to put pen to paper. He wrote, "I write because I want to make things clear, to get rid of the muddle in my own mind," highlighting the therapeutic nature of writing as a means of clarifying one's thoughts and emotions. This essay, with its introspective tone and self-deprecating humor, would become a beloved classic among writers and readers alike. In 1950, Orwell married Sonia Brownell, a young and talented editor who had worked with him at Horizon magazine. The marriage brought him happiness and stability in his final years, but his health continued to deteriorate. Sonia, with her quick wit and sharp intellect, was a source of comfort and inspiration for Orwell, and he drew heavily from her insights and critiques as he worked on his writing. On January 21, 1950, George Orwell passed away at the age of 46, leaving behind a body of work that would have a profound impact on literature, politics, and culture. The news of his passing sent shockwaves through the literary world, with tributes pouring in from around the globe. He was a fierce critic of totalitarianism in all its forms, whether fascist, communist, or capitalist, and he believed that the only way to combat these forces was through the power of language and ideas. As he once wrote, "If liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they do not want to hear," a sentiment that encapsulates the essence of his work and serves as a reminder of the importance of critical thinking, moral courage, and the power of language. Today, George Orwell is remembered as one of the most important and influential writers of the 20th century. His works continue to be widely read and studied, and his ideas about politics, language, and culture remain highly relevant in our modern world. As we navigate the complexities of our own time, with its fake news, social media echo chambers, and populist demagoguery, Orwell's legacy serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of intellectual honesty, critical thinking, and individual freedom. In an era where language is increasingly used to manipulate and deceive, Orwell's warnings about the dangers of doublespeak and propaganda are more relevant than ever. His writings remain a powerful reminder of the importance of language, truth, and intellectual honesty, and his commitment to individual freedom and moral courage serves as a beacon of hope in a world that often seems to have lost its way. That's all for today's Biography with Plutarch. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, remember that understanding the lives of remarkable individuals helps us better understand ourselves